Alrighty. Well, Johnny, thank you today for your time for this interview. I just wanted to ask you a few questions over the topic of de escalation. So, my first question for you would be how would you define the word de escalation?
De escalation is when you take control of the situation that's already out of control. It's probably the best way to put it in law enforcement.
Understood. So, then what type of trainings do you undergo as a police officer in de escalating a situation?
So I've been a cop for almost 7 years. And we had training pretty much from the start in the police academy, and every year we do biennium training. As a police officer in New Mexico, you have to have a certain amount of training hours every 2 years. My current department does training at least once or twice a year for de-escalation, um, to include kind of like mental health and how to deal with them. That's a big thing. So we probably do de-escalation training every 3 months.
Well, nice. So, in your opinion, how effective are de escalation trainings?
De-escalation trainings are really good. It really helps you to understand, get tips, and kind of have an idea of what to expect when you go out. But as far as effectiveness, you really need to just go out and do it. So I'd say to a regular police officer, like a rookie coming out, it's probably about 30 to 40% effective. And then the other 60% would come from actually dealing with people and de-escalating the situation.
Understood. So, what are the correct ways to de escalate a situation?
So there's several different ways to go about de-escalating a situation. It really just depends because every person is different. Um, so like if it's a domestic disturbance, you're going to want to go at it as if you would in, I guess, your own relationship, or go at it in a relationship way, versus if it's like a mom and kid, you're going to want to go at it like in a parenting way. For example, if I go up to a couple who's arguing, I'm going to try to reason with them, and I get on their level and maybe use my experience from being married for so many years. Um, or same thing if it's with kids and they're fighting, use my experience as a parent to help give them tips. Uh, when when it comes to different situations like that, the main goal is to try to figure out what you have right away, so that way you don't use the wrong approach.
Okay. That's kind of like my next question. What are the incorrect ways to de-escalate a situation?
So the incorrect way to de-escalate a situation, for example, like the parenting one, because I've done this before, because my kids are pretty young. When you show up to a call and it's a mom and she has older kids and they're fighting with each other, and you tell her, you know what, you're a parent, it's your job, you need to figure it out. That's true, and that's what we all want to say, and that's what I have said. But on the same note, you're not helping. So, in a sense, you're not de-escalating. You're not getting control of the situation, like I said in the first question. So what you don't want to do is show up and think you have an answer when you haven't even investigated or decided what you're actually trying to de-escalate.
Okay, understood. So, what are the dangers or risks in not de-escalating a situation?
Well, if you don't de-escalate a situation, you don't have control of the situation. If you don't have control of the situation, as a police officer, there's no reason for you to be there. Because realistically speaking, any call we go to can probably be handled by the people who were there, people who are calling. The reason why they're calling us is because they need the outside help, which, is most of the time to step in and take control for them because they don't know how to do it themselves.
Interesting. So then, in your experience, when a life is lost during a de-escalation, what is the impact on the police officers involved?
So we just had a situation where we were de-escalating a male subject on a call, and it ended with him taking his life. And I know it was very rough on all the police officers who were there. It sucked for me, especially having to deal with the family and trying to figure out what to do, because it's not very often that happens, but it does happen. When this happened to us, we had a lot of young officers with us, and I'd had it happen a couple times before, so I kind of knew what to expect. But at the end of the day, every person is different, so you can't go about your situation the same way.
Yeah.
So you need to we call it debrief. So and there's people that you're not going to be able to de-escalate. Like I tell my officers whenever we show up, if you are going to a call, for example, like a domestic disturbance, the one that we had, they're already fighting before someone called the cops. At least a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, could be 10 minutes, 20 minutes. We've had it to where it's hours that they're fighting before we're called. So before we even show up, this person already knows that the cops are probably going to be called. They know we're going to show up. If they have weapons, they know they've already made up their mind before we show up. So there's not a lot we could do as police officers other than try. Unfortunately, sometimes when we try, it doesn't end well, and that's going to carry on with the officers for pretty much the whole career.
Understood. In your experience, when a life is lost during an escalation, what is the impact on the individuals involved?
Well, there's a bunch of different impacts. For the one that I was just talking about, I know the family is real sad. The spouse of the male who took his life, she blamed us, which is okay. I guess that's what we're there for, even though we had nothing to do with it. Like I said, he made up his decision before we showed up. Even though we talked to him for, it felt like hours, he was going to do what he was going to do.
Yeah.
It sucks for the family having to deal with the kids, and the kids asking where their dad is. We're only there for a few short hours while we're on the call. Once I go home, I'm done with it. I leave it at the door. I don't think about it. We might talk about it a few days later. Like I said, it'll come up throughout your career. Until you think about it, pass by the house, stuff like that. But we're not the ones that have to live with it. It's the families. So all I can tell you is what I see in the few hours that I'm with them, which is sadness, and I don't know what else really follows, but I know it's not a good thing. Yeah. So if we're able to show up and able to de-escalate it, you need to try your best.
100%. When encountering a situation where mental health issues play a role, do the de-escalation strategies change or remain the same?
So it changes. The good thing is with mental health, it's easier than dealing with regular people or regular people who are just fighting and having a bad day, because there's a lot of studies that go into mental health. And luckily for us, whenever these studies take place, the departments and the people who do these studies bring it to us because they know that we're the first ones to come in. So we know in dealing with someone with mental health, you're not going to de-escalate them the way you would someone else by yelling at them or coming up to them or even pointing your light at them, because these are things that will trigger them. So the department's really good at teaching us different things that will trigger them, such as touching, eye contact, lights, sirens, and other things we could expect based off of studies that other people who are smarter than me have done.
Understood. So what are the correct ways to de-escalate a situation when there is mental health involved? So
the best way to de-escalate it when there's someone who has mental health illnesses is to slow down. I have yet to deal with someone with a mental illness that I can't consider that be the same as dealing with a kid. When kids see you, they know you're the authorities. They know that you're the one in charge. They know you're the cop. They know that they can trust you. Same with people with mental health. They might not show it, but they know who we are, and they know to a certain extent they can trust us because they have the mind of a child the majority of the time. So when you deal with them, you just want to slow down. You want to talk to them like a friend. You want to avoid triggering them, and you want to try your best to catch a hook on them. Find something that really, really catches their attention, where you're able to find a way in to start de-escalating them.
Okay. Understood. So are you able to provide any incorrect ways to de-escalate a situation when there is mental health involved?
Yeah, it would be kind of to rush a situation. If you know that there's someone who has mental health issues and you've been there before, you don't want to rush it. You don't want to go in and just start putting hands on. You don't want to start putting handcuffs on them. You don't want to start yelling at them. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to. And it sucks, but we could control the situation to a certain extent. But of course, if we have, like for example, I had someone just about a week or two ago who has mental health illnesses, and we try our best to slow down and talk to him. But as we were doing this, he was picking up rocks, throwing them at his caretaker, trying to punch his caretaker. And unfortunately, we had to put him in handcuffs and set him in a car and forcefully take him for an evaluation. Because all the other things that we've tried before, the little hooks that I was talking about, such as giving him a teddy bear or asking him to show us his room, weren't working on this day. And that's where we had to really slow down and figure out what was going to happen. But on the same page, we had to realize once he was escalating the situation on his own, and our slow down methods and the bear method and showing us his room method weren't working, we had to take control of the situation before he took control of the situation.
Okay, understood. So my last question is, what is your opinion that 21 states do not require de-escalation training for police officers?
So if you don't have de-escalation training, there's no point in you being a police officer. Like I said at the beginning, we show up to calls where people could probably handle on their own, but they need someone who's going to de-escalate it, who's going to take control. If you're part of the 21 states that don't do that, then you're not helping. It sucks that people still don't practice de-escalation, but there's a lot of different states that are behind, small states, stuff like that. And I'm just happy that we belong to the state that does do as much de-escalation training as we can, as well as mental health training, because it helps. Makes our job easier, makes us safer, makes the community safer.
Awesome. Good. Well, that's all I have for you, so thank you for your time, Johnny.